The developers have said that a number of the features that were released in the beta update that we recently covered for Age of Wonders 4 have been unpopular. As a result, they've issued a bunch of changes, and in this video, we're going to take a look at what they've changed in the open beta for Age of Wonders 4. Let's jump in. Yesterday, I made a dedicated video with some gameplay about the changes to the research system and the magic victory, which has been overhauled to become kind of the golden wonder victory. So I'm not going to talk about that here, but of course that has changed. If you'd like the full details, you're welcome to check out that video. Let's move through and take a look at actually some of the maybe slightly more controversial things, as well as some updates to the AI. Perhaps the thing that was liked the least, although maybe the research changes are a bit controversial too, was the spellcasting limit, where we were limited basically to a single spell on the world map per turn. They say that a large majority of players disliked it, understandably, so they've gotten rid of it from the game. But they do still need a way, they argue, to slow down the player's ability to cast a shiteload of spells in almost no time. So what they've done now is added a new system called spell slots, which determine how many spells you can prepare and store without casting them. It means that if you've got a lot of casting points, you can still cast plenty of spells, but those without that will no longer be able to prepare a large number of spells over time and then spam them all out at once. And that's the idea behind the spell slots. They've done a pass on player casting point income and the cost of spells as well. The main goal was to make higher levels a little bit cheaper and make the cheap stuff a bit more expensive. So basically to try and lift the average price up, or I guess more importantly, kind of make more of a bell curve, kind of bring things a bit closer to the middle. What they say is that it reduces an issue where a spell that's been, let's say, a reasonable cost in the early game being endlessly spammed later on because of that casting point dilemma. They've also upped the power of a number of world map attack spells. Those are a bit problematic, but I guess if they're limited, they're not. Many people complained that they felt weak and were not effective, and they agree. Yeah, I feel like maybe just a quick note in the newer update, there could be a way to potentially spam that a bit. We'll have to wait and see though. Let's move through and talk about the changes to the hero cap. Another one that was a little bit controversial, maybe a bit too expensive. What they had done in the beta was basically make it that a proportion of your income, 15%, was the cost for extra heroes. It was a bit extreme. People generally felt like the initial cost for the heroes was too low, and now they feel it's too high, and I agree. They've removed that system that I just talked about and gone with one with flat values rather than a percentage of the money that you earn. I think that's very important. The first hero over the cap will cost 30 gold and 5 Imperium, the same as before, but note, a little bit of extra Imperium. The second hero doubles that to 60 gold and 10, for a total of 90 and 15. The third will cost 90 and 15, so on and so forth. So you can see it's adding 30 gold and adding an extra 5 Imperium onto the cost of the previous hero. That's how much your next one will cost. So it's scaling up in a much more linear fashion now, instead of just wildly taxing a huge portion, potentially, of your gold income if you're a gold earning empire. And actually there's been some changes to the champions too. We'll talk about them towards the end of the video. A very quick one on summoning rules. You used to be able to summon in units anywhere all over the map. Then they changed it in the beta so that you could only do it around your ruler. That's your one hero who actually leads the faction, not all of the rest of them. If you're a little bit worried about the semantics there, that's the difference between ruler and hero. A ruler is of course a hero, but most of your heroes aren't rulers. I love sentences like that. Like a square's not a rectangle, but a rectangle's a square, or however it goes. Anyway, to address this, what they've done is made it so that you can now also summon units next to an army with a hero. So all of your heroes will be able to have units summoned next to them, bringing back a lot of the tactical power and the advantages that summoned units have, remembering of course that they cost a lot of mana and upkeep. And the last headline point, before I go through and talk about some other general update changes they're actually pretty spicy, like the champion leaders change, and crucially I'd also like to cover the AI changes, because I think that for the most part, those are the ones that tend to attract the most negativity around Age of Wonders 4. But before that, let's have a quick note on ranged accuracy. Once again, a mixed response. They found that people, well, actually, they say that with some people finding the change annoying, while others welcoming the end of the dominance of ranged units. So how do they approach it? They've decided to roll back the changes to attack range, which meant basically that long-range penalties kicked in sooner, so archers and battle mages will be more accurate like they used to be. What they're keeping, though, are the various tweaks that make it harder to get bonus accuracy through enchantments and buffs, because it was slightly problematic the way that you could stack those and get this incredible kind of death laser beam arrows. They've also made some modifications to some of the ranged attack enhancements so that they're less focused on increasing your damage and more about applying debuffs to the enemy. So less about strengthening you and more about weakening them. They've also changed some of the melee attack enchantments, I should say, so that they do extra damage to units with the debuffs. The goal here is, I guess, to add a little bit of synergy. They say it's to help ranged units useful, but also make them synergize better with melee units instead of obsolete them. Maybe there's a little bit of work around what they're actually trying to say there. If I were to summarize it, I would say the idea is that there should be synergy between the classes rather than melee units being made obsolete by the extreme power of ranged units. We'll have to playtest this one a bit and see how it plays out. There are 4 quick general changes that will probably make quite a difference. Firstly, champion leaders, one of 3 types, of course, if you're not a wizard king or a dragon, now gain 20 draft on their throne city, providing a faster way for them to get troops out early. That's quite important. I wouldn't sleep on that. The wizard tower, if you're a wizard king, now has affinity-specific city upgrades at tier 2 and 3 that buff spells associated with an affinity. And you can see that here on your screen. I was playing around with them a little bit recently. They're quite interesting. Traits from Race Council events, remind you that's an event, now give +2 of their respective racial affinity points rather than +1. Finally, some of my favorite things in the game, magic materials, have been debuffed in a very slight way. Of course, in this update, they've also shifted them around a bit, made the red ones, the sort of more aggressive, combat-focused ones, largely exclusive to the underground. But here what they've done is changed the research bonus, and it's only for the ingredient experimentation perk, which I think is in the astral affinity tree. It used to give you 15 knowledge. Now you only get 10 knowledge per magic material. Again, it's a relatively niche one because it only affects that one part of the magic materials, but it's a pretty significant change to what was a very powerful ability before. And now let's talk about the AI. So the AI has been, again, tweaked a little bit here, this time around diplomacy, around threats, and how it spends its cash. So the AI has been coded, or it's had support coded in for it to understand the new magic victory. The fact that it needs to go out and get some gold and ancient wonders, cast some spells, and then defend those. And of course, it also needs to be able to stop us from doing that, now that they're sort of moving away from summoning in marauding units and instead looking to try and get the AI to fight us instead. They've also added support for the AI to save up Imperium to buy the City Cap Empire Tree skill. Now that's very important because they'll be taking a load of penalties, maybe most significantly to their knowledge, because of course it's now arguably more difficult, or at least more time consuming, to move through the research and tech tree. So the AI needs to be across this, and it needs to be able to avoid those things. That one feels like less of a, yay, let's celebrate this new feature and change, and more like, to me anyway, much more in the camp of, why was this not like that from the start? Not to complain, I'm just saying this is kind of what I would assume the AI should ought to be doing anyway. Next up, though, we have a myriad of changes for making declarations. The amount of declarations, those friendships or rivalries or what have you, that will be made on a player by the AI should now be more balanced. Good to hear. The AI should also no longer abundantly declare friendships on you, unless you declare a friendship on them. Isolationists, those who like to keep to themselves, will no longer declare friendships unless it's declared on them first, and an AI issue was fixed where the influence of ranking declarations was inverted. Now let's move through to some more sort of high-level changes to the AI's behavior. There's been an update for the AI's threat system. The system's been expanded to look at several new factors, and it's been tweaked to achieve more competition with nearby rulers and rulers that are competing in the overall ranking. So the AI should be able to acknowledge threats, particularly if they're close by, and then act on those. Generally, AI rulers should also initially act more threatened and hostile, and this will help prevent turtling up in the early game. In my experience with Age of Wonders 4, I've found that generally the AI doesn't attack me at the start, even if it's a more aggressive AI. And I think that, there should be these different personalities. Like here we've talked about isolationists, no longer just declaring friendships, and that's just one example of how these AI personalities could, I think, really make the Age of Wonders experience better. And improving this threat system, and maybe even just making some of them quite a bit more aggressive at the start or mid-game, could really impact the overall swing. Lastly, 3 more quick points. The AI will now mention the magic victory when they declare war on you, so you kind of have an idea about why they're doing it, if that wasn't already immediately obvious. They've also fixed an issue where the AI wouldn't use siege projects, so maybe they'll be a bit stronger when they're fighting us, and where the AI would see less priority in building a wall for a city that has no walls while at war. To be honest with you, AI, I'm kind of on board with you there. I am chronic for not prioritizing those defensive structures. Maybe that means that they need to do more. Or maybe I'm an outlier and all of you are out there building walls straight away. Let me know below what you think about walls. This is not a bait for comments, because no one in any great masses, let's be real, are going to be commenting on walls in this video. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. Are you like me? Do you completely ignore the defensive structures in Age of Wonders 4 until maybe you absolutely have to, or you have nothing else that you want to build? Let me know. And they continue to tinker with the tomes of magic as well. You can see a few examples of the changes on screen. I will, of course, have the sources, as I always do, linked below, so you can check it out in full if you'd like to have a bit of a read. Thank you very much for joining me today in this version 2 of the Age of Wonders open beta, currently available to PC players on Steam. Anyone can opt into it, and I'd recommend you jump in and give it a go. I think by and large, especially this version, seems to be a better version. And of course, all of this will be rolling out with the Watcher update, which we're expecting this summer. The developers have said that a lot of the changes in this beta now are close to being finalized, with of course the research changes and the magic victory in particular basically being done at this stage, given they've had a developer's diary about them. I think that's safe to assume. Thanks for joining me today, everyone. Have a great weekend, if it's the weekend while you're watching this. That's why I don't do time-sensitive outros. Anyway, I'll see you next time.